Count it down. Joe Rogan style. 3,
Ready.
2, 1. G'day everybody, welcome back to Paddlecast. A very, very special episode today. Somebody I'm pretty damn excited to chat with. A bloke I've known for a long time and who many of you watching will know in one way or another because he's an absolute bloody legend in this sport. He's won pretty much all the big races, and specifically he's won Molokai to Oahu 4 times? 4-time champion of the most prestigious race in the world. It is, of course, none other than Travis Grant. He's back in the country for just a week, and we were lucky enough to get him here in the studio for a little Paddlecast episode. So, Travis, mate,
howdy, Christopher.
Welcome.
Thanks,
How are you?
Good.
Are you home or are you visiting Australia? Because you're kind of Hawaiian now.
I'm visiting because I'm going to the bakeries. I'm doing all the tourist stuff. But no, honestly, I feel like I'm visiting.
So Hawaii is your home?
Yeah, it does feel like I've been here 30 years. So I guess I can't call Hawaii home till I'm 60. And I've trumped my 30 years living here. So yeah, I'm 37 now, so I've been away for 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
How is it?
I think when did stand-up start? Because I met you like 5 years before I left Australia.
When did you move to Hawaii?
7 years ago. I think it's 11.
And when did you start paddling?
When stand-up started, when the first, I think it was the first BOP, I saw Danny Ching and Jamie Mitchell, and I was like, oh, I know those guys, I could do this. And then sure enough, she got a windsurf board and an outrigger paddle, and I was like, was more just that race is what saw me. I was like, I didn't even know what was happening. I would have gone over and done it. And
the first BOP?
In California. No, the first BOP.
Or the second?
The second one. The first one actually, Chuck won. I think a good friend of mine, T-Bear from Hawaii, who's actually a canoe paddler. He was
Chuck won 2008.
That when it was. So
and Danny and Jamie's were 2009.
So I started 2010-ish then.
Mm.
Huh.
You want some tea?
Yeah, it's really good tea.
Chinese tea.
Very Aussie.
So you've been paddling since 2009, 2010. Do you remember your first race?
Yes, the first race was local. It was the first big race was the BOP Hawaii. That was the first time I'd ever actually got paid to fly somewhere by Kia Loa at the time, and I was with a DC board, and I flew the board over there with me, and it was tippy. Back then, 26 or something, and it was tippy. And yeah, training with Danny Ching, and I was like, I think I'm going to get in this sport. It could be pretty good. And then me and him having an epic battle. But before that, the first race was the Noosa Surf Festival. And I was the first on Woogie Marsh. I don't know, this is like way back. This is obviously people who started back then would know all this. He's from canoe paddling. He was winning everything in Australia. And I just rocked up and met Dale Chapman and said, hey, can I borrow a board? I think I can do this. And he's like, yeah, sure. Like, who are you? And then we out the canal, out the surf, and I came in like miles in front, and he's like, damn. And that's how it all started. It's seriously just from a Noosa festival.
Wow.
And I did get into it, and it was enjoyable.
So it's been 10 years.
Yeah, I thought, it has to be. Yeah. It has been exactly 10 years.
And you're still doing it.
Sort of.
I
still can do it. But whether I'm still
Are
doing
you still doing it?
You know,
are you going to race at all this year? Because you've been paring down your schedule year by year to the fact.
Yeah.
Now you basically just do Molokai. You phone that in, and last year you were injured anyway.
Last year I'm a bit bummed because I was training last year for that. I do live there, and I was like, no, I'll do one more year of this and do it well and try and win 5. And it's just an arbitrary goal, but you just like, yeah, why not? And then I did get injured, hurt my rib canoe surfing, and I was kind of bummed because the conditions are epic, and luckily my D record didn't fall, so that's a good thing, under 4 hours. So still the only person under 4 hours. It will fall one day, but I don't know. Everything needs to be perfect, and like last year was the ultimate year to do it, and luckily for me it didn't happen. So it will fall one day, but it might be a long while until the conditions line up again. And it's not the wind, it's the tide. You need the tide to be absolutely perfect. So I don't know if I will do it again, tell you the truth. I mean, it's not that I don't want to, it's just...
Molokai or sup racing in general?
No, I'll still sup race. I mean, I'll still get out there and race, but like Molokai...
But if you're not going to do Molokai, are you going to do anything?
Next year, I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. I know that as an APP...
This year,
my bad.
It's already 2020, mate.
APP's got that race in Maui, and it's downwind, and I live there. I'm like, maybe if I could do that, and then maybe I might do Molokai. I'm not sure. It's just such a stressful event to lead up to. Like, so you got to put a lot of mental energy into the training. So I sort of know what to do. I'm just like, do I want to put myself through that again? And sort of for what? Like, obviously you do it as a goal to do well and for yourself. Now I've done it. I've got first, second, I think. And so I'm like, do I really want to put myself through this again? obviously I know the feeling, what it's like to win. So there's that, which is drives you, because you remember the good times over the bad. I don't remember how hard some of the training was and how sometimes your feet hurt so much you just want to, I don't want to do this anymore. But the good times trump that. And that's why you still drink, I guess, because you remember the good times of drinking, not the hard times. It's kind of luckily the brain or the human works like that. Otherwise you'd never do anything, right? So I don't know, we'll see. But then we're doing that Yukon race in June, that 3-day Yukon race. So
very
that's
excited
not
about
the
that.
ultimate training build up for a Molokai, because there's a lot of stress on the body again, and you do have to recover from that. So to come off that, go home to Hawaii, train for another 4 or 5 hour race, depends on the day. I'm not sure if at 37 with work and I'll be owning our own business in Hawaii, I just being smart and being realistic, like, yeah, of course you could do it, but I think that'll be a little bit too much to ask for me. But I'll decide if obviously I want to do it, I'll tell myself it's not. If I don't want to do it, then I'll just be there. I'll be there whether or not I race. Don't know this year.
So if you don't do Molokai this year, it's my fault?
Yes, because
Basically.
you got me doing the Yukon race. But I mean, that's the thing with paddling. I mean, that's the whole reason I got into the sport, is because I got to go to Europe, and I mean, those APP was even really cool because we got to Paris, London, New York. I mean, obviously I have been to all those places, but this was like for a reason, you know? So it's the same thing with Hawaii. Like, people love to go to Hawaii. Now, if you put a race on, they get to go to Hawaii and do a race, and it's really fun and meet people. So that's sort of the whole reason you do this sport. And so this is this Yukon paddle thing we're going to do in an Indian canoe. Like, that's just next level, something cool. Like, obviously, it's a mental challenge, so it's challenging in itself. So I'm looking forward to that, meeting new people, and it's still in the sport of paddling. So yeah, so I've done Molokai a lot. So I'd rather nearly do another race somewhere else that's a challenge in itself or an adventure in itself. You know what I mean? So I've done Hawaii a lot. I've been doing it since I started going to Hawaii when I was 21 for canoe paddling. Back Chris Maynard actually had Jackson the other day. He's one day driving car, said, you should, if I was your age, I'll go to Hawaii. And I'm like, 20-year-old in Australia going, oh, I never thought of that. And so then I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to Hawaii and do 3 months over there. And that was well before stand up. And that's what started the traveling and paddling thing. And then I just luckily got kind of good at it a bit later in life. All these kids now, I didn't get good till I was like sort of, I guess, 30. And then I've had from 30 till now I'm 37. So 30 to 35 was my best years of paddling, sort of by accident.
So 16 years, around 2003, 2004, you went to Hawaii for outrigger canoe.
Yeah, the one man series.
And that's why you're so good at SUP, is because you and Danny and George, you boys were all outrigger.
Yeah, and there was no money back then. I mean, you just pay for everything, but it was more the fun and and I just loved going to Hawaii. I couldn't believe how lucky the people live there. I didn't even know you could live there. You know what I mean? And one day I found out you could. And that was sort of my goal from there. I was like, I should marry an American. So that's the best way to get to Hawaii. So I just started traveling the world and finally met an American in New Jersey.
Did you really think that before you met Blair?
No,
it would be cool to marry an American?
She knows that. Yeah.
Wow.
No, it wasn't the goal, but that's how you moved. And so here I am. Next minute, how many years later, I'm living in Hawaii. I was like, that weird sort of half thing I thought about came reality. And it can happen if you think hard enough. Same with the races. It's like people, they always ask you, like, what do you do? What do you eat? What do you this? And I was like, to tell you the truth, I actually just visualize winning the race. Now, it sounds weird, but I've done that. The first BOP with Danny in Hawaii, I honestly, I should have won it. I was in front, but I fumbled. The next year, it was the exact same course, and I was like, I know exactly what to do here. And I actually did visualize how to beat him, where to beat him. And then when I was doing the race, the whole thing came exactly how I dreamt it.
Yeah.
Not the whole race, just increments. I'm like, this is where I'm going to try and make a move. And I got lucky, got away. And the same thing happens with Molokai. Like, I can't go and just visualize Le Mans because I've never done the racetrack. But if you know what you're in for, like say Molokai, I've done it a few times before. I sort of knew I was in for it. And I just dream about what I was doing. And then I was training there at the time. Immediately, I just moved to Hawaii in July. I had 3 weeks to train. That's when I decided to do the race 3 weeks before the first race. I was like, I've got nothing to do for a month, so I get my visa. I'll do Molokai. I met Billy Rebello, and they took me training, and I'd do the train. I'd actually just dream about how nice and amazing it would be to win. And the more you dream, and it just happened. It actually came. So every year I would actually dream about where and how I would do it. And that came more true than anything else, believe it or not. But it's very hard. And there's a lot of things on that, but it's very hard to just switch and do that. If you're so busy in life, you've got other stresses. But when you move to Hawaii and you've like nothing else to think about, That's all I was thinking about. I was like, 3 weeks of focus, and it worked. And so it worked before that, and so I do that sometimes for some big races, and sometimes you're a big race coming, and you just for life you can't, something stressing us in your life, and you just can't focus on the race. You're like, like with other times I've gone to races, like I can't lose, like I know exactly what I'm going to do, and 9 times out of 10 it does come true. But it's not easy to do. You can't just do it out of thin air. I didn't dream about this podcast, so it could go either way.
Doing good so far, mate. Joe Rogan be proud. So you've been going to Hawaii for at least 16 years. You've been living there for 7 years. Do you paddle your sup when you're in Hawaii ever, or do you just do outrigger runs for fun? Because you went back. I want to ask you. You said you did outrigger in the early days when there was no money. It was just fun. And I remember you made an interesting comment once 5 years ago saying, I'd still rather go and do an outrigger race if I had the chance, even though there's no money in it. I think I grew up paddling, and then I had some, when you're younger, you have some idols or heroes. And again, like no one knows, it was just a small niche group. And so it was all about, I was just talk to my wife about this. I didn't realize it. It's all about sort of proving to them, look how good I can be, but doing it in the nicest way possible. And so that was sort of always, you're always trying to like catch up to your heroes or your goals. And then when you do it, you're like, I don't know, it's an incredible feeling where stand up kind of just came along, and we just we were like Jamie, Danny Ching, myself, George, we were the early people who were all similar age, jumped in and became good. So we sort of I had no one to chase or idolize. Like we just became the idols instantly. And I guess the Connor and all those guys, I guess, were more chasing us, but we sort of had no one really to chase. So it was a very different dynamic. So I was still trying to prove myself in outrigger, and all of a sudden I'm good at stand-up. And I was like, this isn't fair. Like haven't mastered the one I want. So I always wanted to try and master the canoe. Stand-up just kept getting those, then there's sort of bits of money and travel, and I never say no to an opportunity. So I was like, oh, come to this. So I was just yes. And so I never really full-heartedly dove into stand-up. I just got lucky, but I think that's also why I did so well, because they always say like, you've got to give 100% focus, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I was, but I think at the same time I had a good balance, because when I did have a bad result, it wouldn't affect me. Whereas I know other people who are full-time stand-up have a bad result, and they're like, they feel worthless, you know what I mean? And that's terrible. And you do need to go wholeheartedly, because when you do win, it is an incredible feeling. But when you lose, you got to be careful not to get so depressed because you've thrown all your eggs in this one basket. So I never had all my eggs in stand-up. I had them kind of everywhere, and I was playing a good game. And now I've got other eggs of business and family, so all of a sudden I've had to drop some of the other eggs. And you can't be an athlete at the level it needs to be and have so many going on. So you got to sort of, that's where you do have to focus on athlete. But the ups and downs are huge if you do that. So I was a little bit more mellow in my life, and I got lucky. I got some great results. And don't get me wrong, I love competition, and I do want to compete, but at the end of the day, once the race is over, I just sort of immediately erase it from my memory, you learn from it, and then you're a little bummed, or you're really happy, and you're like, that was fun, and sort of what's next in my life. Like, I don't want to think, you don't want to live in the past anymore, sort of thing. So I'm like, cool, that was a good win. And some people are like, you're not even happy, I'm over the moon. But I mean, like, what's next, sort of thing. So it sounds weird, but that's sort of how I live life. So I don't. Was outrigger more serious? Did you get bummed more with an outrigger loss?
No, I didn't.
Or was it the same mentality?
No expectations. It was just personal expectations. Whereas someone you get sponsored, people expect you to do well. And I used to never let that get to me, because I'm used to not being sponsored. So I feel bad for some of the kids that all they ever get is they get let down. Like, you see some kids go full on stand up, and they're like, oh, I'm not getting enough money. Or like, so you're looking at it the wrong way. Like, so where, I came from just paddling for fun. So stand up was just a bonus. And all the money I got from stand-up, I never actually spent. I actually just put in a different account, because it wasn't money I was used to, so I pretended it never came. So every time I won, it was just a bonus. I put it in, and then that account ended up basically, actually I've still got it. And there's a fair bit in there, and it's it was for Blair School, or it's going to be for my kids' school. It's not for me. So it was actually also more enjoyable to race like that, because there was no pressure on myself. It was just a bonus. The race is the fun bit. The results are just a bonus. So I had some good results, and I enjoyed the good bonuses. But canoe paddling, what was the question?
Did you take a canoe loss more heavily than a sup loss?
No, I learnt, because there was no expectations. What I was saying, it was it was just on myself.
So there was a balance between both. Sup was more of a bonus, and you didn't take a loss too seriously.
No.
Outrigger, you're probably a little bit more passionate about, but you had less expectation.
Yeah, and then eventually I sort of broke through in outrigging, and I was really, really happy, and I still enjoy the sport because I still feel like I didn't reach. So I did winning a Molokai in canoe. It's got a slight asterisk to it because I actually crossed the line second. And
old mate, was it Kevin got DQ'd?
Yeah, it was in 50 seconds in front of me, and I was so happy with my race. I was like, Travis, honestly, that's the best you'll ever do in this. Like, I don't know how I could do better. He was right there. He didn't falter at the end. Luckily for me, he actually got caught on his own boat wash because he was going the wrong way. Now, at the end, I didn't see it, but 4 other boats did in the official boat, and no one spoke English or French on either boat. He couldn't speak English. His boat didn't speak French, so they just drove in front of him and they towed him back on line. Like,
so he was wash riding
right in front of us all. But when you're 4 hours in a race, it's a pretty flat race that year. I didn't see it. I'm not looking up logies. I'm just doing my thing. And when you get there, you're just pacing yourself. My escort boat zoomed up, the official boat zoomed up, and they caught him wash riding his own boat, eating and drinking back on line. They got back to the wall, and the boat drove off, and he finished the race, and just in front of me. So they're like, you got DQ, 2-minute penalty because that's how long you did it for. You win. And at first I was like, nah, it's not fair. Like he beat me. Like, no, like we're going to DQ him, but instead we're going to give him a penalty because we don't want to you don't want to piss anyone off. Like, he still did a good race. I actually refused it, and then I was like sitting there. I was like, you know what? I should take this because it's very nice. This is not the easiest thing to ever win. So, and I said, no, I'll take it. And he admitted it. He's like, no, I did do that. I'll take the penalty. So, and he accepted the penalty. If he didn't accept the penalty, I would have been fine with it. But he accepted it. And so I took the win. And then it was satisfying enough because I was like, okay, I've reached the goal. But there's so many goals in canoe paddling that it's like, there's so many better paddlers out there than me. And then they look at me like, oh, you're one of the best stand-up guys in the world. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? You're like way better than me. But so the crossover's there. But again, I think you do have to specialize in these best paddlers in Tahiti are the best paddlers in my eyes, haven't cracked the stand-up. And I don't know why. I think they're just more passionate in the canoe. And there are some great stand-up paddlers that just can't crack the canoe.
Go back a second. Why is Tahiti such a strong paddling nation? For anyone that give us like the layman's definition, for people that haven't been to Tahiti, why is it so special?
Why is I think Europe so good at soccer? I think it's just a passion. This is what everyone's doing. And if you want to be same as sort of surfing in Hawaii or surfing here or Ironman here, which is the surf life saving. I think it's just a passion. And over there, it's like, that's the thing. You either pick fruit, hunt fish, surf, or if you want to be somebody, you want to be a poster boy, you want to travel, like it's a third world country sort of thing. If you want to be a poster boy, you want to travel, you become a good paddler, like you're respected. And people, that's the biggest thing with paddling is it's the respect. And you've got respect. You can't just say, hey, do I have respect yet? It's sort of one of those things you have to earn, and you can only earn it, I mean, over time in the trenches sort of, and people just all of a sudden will respect you. And I remember trying to always chase respect, like in Hawaii, because you respect people and you're like, oh, how do I get the respect of my peers that if you're steering a canoe, back then it was a 6-man's. How do people respect you? And so I was always after people's respect. And so I think that's sort of why I just try so hard, and all of a sudden you sort of get it all. And it's like, wow, it's really cool when people do respect your opinion. And I don't want to put my opinion on. I try, people who know me, like they ask questions and I don't comment unless I was there. And I think there's a lesson for people. You can't comment on something unless you're actually there, sort of thing. So people are, oh, did you win? I was like, well, if you were there, you would know what happened. But if you weren't there, you've got no comment. And so I always have to respect. Now you got the respect, and then you're like, oh, now what? Sort of thing. And so that's sort of where I've been. I'm a little bit lost. Like, you're not chasing it anymore. So you've lost your drive, your motivation. So the only reason I did Molokai again was Dave Kalama called me out. When I won the race and the stand-up, I was like, I'm not doing that again. Like, that was the hardest thing in my feet.
After your first one, you mean?
Yeah, and I was living in it, and I was, there's no way. Like, and then he's like, you can't just pull that. You won, you're defending champ. You have to defend. And otherwise it might have been a fluke. Like, you might have cheated. And I was like, oh, I'll show you what, man. And that's the reason. And then I didn't win. Connor beat me that year. It was a battle back and forth. And I was like, and that didn't piss me off. And I was like, no, I'm better than this. I can do this. And I did win. And then the next year, Kai won. I win again, and then Kai won. Then I was like, no, I'll do it one more time. And then Kai didn't race. I was like, that was the idea was to try and, Kai deserved it that year. He beat me for sure. Like, we were again battling back and forth. I think he had the record then too. And that was a bit more motivation. Is like, no, I want to get that back. And then so I did. And I got 2 years in a row. And then I was like, okay, that is enough. Like I've proved to myself I can do it. Like what's another challenge? So that's just me. And some people do the sport forever, but I kind of want to keep evolving and doing something else. I don't want to get, because then you get stuck like, oh, I used to be this good. I sort of don't want to get caught in that thinking of the past. I want to keep looking for something else in the future. So I will do the sport still. I just don't know in what capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is next? I can tell you what's next. You're going to be training for the next 5 months for a very long cold paddle down a river in Canada.
Yeah, and I was doing the canoe.
The Yukon.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it yet, so I've got to look into it.
If you got any
444
questions,
miles, 700 and something kilometres. I know you've done it on a stand-up. How long did it take you? 3 days?
It took me 71 hours of racing time, plus the breaks. About 8. Yeah, it was about 3.5 days.
The attraction to that is the mental race. It's kind of like fasting. I'd fast for 5 days every now and then. And the main thing is the mental challenge, especially if you're preparing food for your baby, for your kid. Preparing food, like smelling food, I'd have to do that.
You've done a 5-day fast.
I used to do it every December. Yeah, I try and do that every December. Again, like I heard it somewhere on a podcast. Podcast, you get some good information, ladies and gentlemen. And I believed it. So it's the same, like, all information, there's information out there, everything. But if you believe in something, same with training, I just believed in what sessions I was doing. Mm-hmm. And if I believe that they're going to make me faster doing this in this race, and I visualize why I'm training, why I'm doing this interval for this race, then when you're in the race, you do the intervals that you've been practicing. Because that's the whole idea of, I don't call it practice, I call it training. So, sorry, I don't call it training, I call it practice. Because I'm practicing what I'm trying to do. I'm not, trainings, I think you do for work or school, I don't know. Like, I don't know what training sounds like, a labor. Where practice is like, no, I've got to practice this interval or this efficiency or this surfing or this, if you're in flat water, you got to practice basically your efficiency if you're in flat water. I don't just go out there and go as hard as I can and expect to get a good result. So I've always tried to be efficient as I can in my training and I practice. So I can't remember where I was going with this as well.
Yukon, 3 days.
Yeah, no, that's going to be hard to practice for.
It's going to be like a fast.
Oh yeah, fasting, that's right. So I believe in my training. So saying I believe there's information I get. I think it was from Ben Greenfield. He's got a pretty good podcast on fitness and health and longevity, and he's the same age. Mm-hmm. So you relate with people of a similar age because you sort of go through the same cycle in life. Like when I was 21, I had a whole different expectations and feelings than I do now at 37. And so I was like, I can do a 5-day fast, you know what I mean? And then I mentally did, and I believed it and I really enjoyed it. So I did it more for the mental test. And I'd paddle every day and I'd just drink water and lemon water and green tea. And so that's what.
How much weight did you lose after?
No, you don't lose that much. You don't lose much at all. A guy, I saw one thing, guy fasted for a year and he lost a lot of weight. He fasted for a year. I it was the biggest guy. I can't remember the thing, but it's pretty popular. That's irrelevant. But you don't lose that much weight at all. You do look a bit more thin and ripped. I think I don't know what you've lost, but no, you don't. I wasn't that much lighter. But I just enjoyed the challenge. So say Molokai is a challenge. Some Yukon, I'm doing it just for a mental test. And same with one of those things. I was just talking to Chris today at lunch, and I was saying to when I was young in the canoe, some of the guys, the guys say once you've done Molokai, say a canoe, it took 5 hours. You know you can do a 5-hour race. So for the rest of my life, I know I can make 5 hours. It's just how fast and efficient can you do it. And that's the whole thing in racing is that once you know you can make the distance, the fastest guy wins. So you sort of got to, so once you do a race like you've done the Yukon now, so in your head, you're like, I can make this. Now you've just got to be like, how can I do it better? How can I do it more efficiently? Or like, where am I downfall? So you have to do Molokai.
3 guys in the boat with me.
Yeah, you can sit down. There's not many sports you can sit down and call yourself an athlete. And canoe paddling's one of them. I'm
definitely looking forward to that. It was a long way standing up for 3 days. I think we're going to do it a hell of a lot faster than I did. Yeah. I was record slow. So 71 hours was silly. But we'll do it in like 40, mid-40s.
I mean, I'll see what happens and I'll learn a lot. But I'm ready for the.
If we can find a fourth member.
If you just get someone and say, come for this paddle, and all of a sudden it's 3 days, they're going to it's going to be the worst time of their life.
Well, we've got to do that because we only got 3 team members.
Yeah, so if someone wants to come join us, me, Jimmy Terrell, and Chris Parker, send your resume to chris@supracer.com.
Yeah. And Trav wants to get line honours, so you can't be a slouch. No, He's already told me I got to start training.
You do have to start training, not pulling your ass around.
Yeah. I had this great idea that I'd sit at the back and you wouldn't see it while I was paddling, and then I realised the guy at the back's got to steer.
Which is the most important.
Which is the hardest part.
It is the most important seat in the canoe.
So you're definitely sitting at the back.
I mean, the steerer, I hate to say it, in the canoe is the most important seat in the canoe because you make, I mean,
there's no rudder.
No, you're using your paddle, and every time you put your paddle in the water, you're dragging. So you need to be able to. If you watch cetaceans, you need to paddle steer the whole time at a different angle, so it's actually heavier because you're moving the canoe.
And it's a big paddle, right?
And
the outrigger steering paddles are massive.
Yeah, well, that's only for ocean. If you're in the flat, you have a same size paddle. If you're good enough, you can handle it. But in the ocean, you need to be a rudder in the big surf in Hawaii. So you have different paddles for different conditions.
How do you actually steer? What are they, like 30 foot long?
44 foot long.
44 foot long.
Yeah, and they're heavy.
How do you steer that with basically your hands and a little paddle?
Your little paddle. I know it's sort of, you guide it. You don't actually control it. So a boat you can control. And then sometimes you're in a boat and you hear it go really heavy, and then it goes really light, and they've got a back end throttle. The canoe's the same sort of thing, just without that same power. So you have to somehow, same with the stand up is you never got to, sometimes you got to force the stand up. You got to force the canoe. But the idea of steering is you don't try and force it. You just let the canoe where it's going to go. And then once you can guide it back on course. This is what Jim Fody in their books, Steve West's canoe culture books, I read and taught. And so when I started realizing that, very thick book. When I realized that, same for the stand up, I didn't want a board that had sharp edges. I want a board that would just flow, and then I'd guide it. And so I would actually sort of not zigzag, but when people were trying to wash ride me, like, gee, you're like all over the place. And I was like, I know. And they hate it. So, but at the same time, it's just, I'm just letting the board and I'm sort of guiding it. And this is in the longer races, of course. Sprint races is a little different. So that's just sort of my style. There are other people like canoe, they hate the fact that the board's always drifting. They want those edges to hold it straight. Or they put the fin back, where I wanted my board loose because the canoe is very sort of loose and hard to control. So, it's just what I believed in. And so I was adamant, and I didn't try other craft. I was just like, no, this is the direction we're going. And luckily someone like Elaine believed it and saw it. Not so my passion, just as like, and as a rider back then, I'm not a designer. I mean, every good rider thinks like, oh, you should do this. But I'm like, that's not true. I don't have a clue about board design. I haven't got a clue about canoe design. It's for the rider. It was more, this is what I want the thing to do, or this is what I feel like it's doing. It'd be nice if it would, like, the nose would slide a little more instead of grabbing, and then you let the designer figure out what, and so we had that really good relationship. I'd never tell him what I thought the board should be. I'd always tell him what I want. If you could make it do this, or like, oh, gee, it really feels like something's grabbed me at the back. You don't tell him. And then so he's like, he works on the release, or he looks and he starts focusing on the tail, and he's like, oh yeah, like that, I could, and all of a sudden he changes something, doesn't tell me, and I'm like, oh, this is incredible. And then again, I get every board got 1% better, and then here's a file that just keeps going, and if it doesn't get better, he goes back one. He says, whereas other companies just throw haymakers left, right, and center and hope one sticks. But again, that's what normally the rider's saying, do this, and this. But the rider should never do that. The rider should say, this is how I did it. What he feels, what he would like to feel, and let the designer figure it out. If the designer's good, they'll figure it out.
You're talking about the NSP designer, Elaine Tuckatil.
We got a good designer.
He's an old Frenchman, and he knows his shit.
He's very, very clever. He wasn't a designer until stand-up.
Yeah. He taught himself how to design boards because he said he wanted his motivation, he told me at least, his motivation for designing boards was so he could design you a winning Molokai board. And
then he did tell me that once, and then I was like, oh, talk about pressure. But that was also my motivation, because this guy wants to, and I was like, I want to do it for him as well. No, he came over and watched a few, and like that was, so I was like, I can't let him down. Like, he put all this effort in this board. He's so confident in the board. So I was so confident in my equipment because my designer was confident in my equipment. And it was. I mean,
it worked.
I feel like I had a huge advantage.
It worked. Eventually, the first couple of wins in Molokai, you weren't on NSPs yet.
No, they didn't have one, and so that was what his motivation was. He's like, I can make a better board than that. You know what I mean? And that was what his motivation was. And
so your two most recent were on the NSPs, 2 or 3 on NSP.
I think 3 were on NSP. Yeah, I did.
Your first one was on the Billy Rebella,
and the second one was on Rebella, and I got second, and then I was NSP after that.
And then Kai bought your board.
He did.
Didn't he buy the master rights
for 5 years? Yeah. So I don't know the full deal, obviously, but he bought my board for 5 years, apparently, something like that. That the rights to design, and
was this so you couldn't paddle it, or so that he could, or both?
No, I think just so no one else had that. So Billy Rebella couldn't keep selling boards. Not that he was selling boards, but no one could buy the same board because the board had one, and so Kai actually used the race-winning board that was on Billy Rebella's wall. So I was on I'd signed it too. So I was on his wall. I made a few foam ones. He still liked the hollow. Was a hollow one actually. Still heavy though, but hollow and pretty wide. From memory, it's pretty wide. 25, which it sounds wide now, but and he put a Nash wrap sticker on it, but he left the signature open, which is in the race notes. Oh look, I left the signature, which was a huge sign of respect. And then he didn't win that year.
That's the year he got second. That was the David and Goliath.
He didn't win
infamous
that year.
David and Goliath year,
And
which
then,
got me blacklisted from Nash for about 5 years after that.
And then he won the year after that though. So he took it. He I mean, you got to hand it to the guy. I mean, like he ticks every box.
He was always going to win that race. Eventually,
I should have stopped him, and I tried, but I couldn't. So he did. He got his equipment dialed. He had faith in it, and he pushed and pushed and pushed, and then he did everything he won. And he's like, so he was very satisfied. And in Hawaii, to win Molokai, it really is. You know, I'm not from Hawaii, but my dream was to always win Molokai in a canoe. But to win Molokai in anything is a huge amount of respect for people in Hawaii, and it is a tick for most people. And I didn't realize how powerful that sort of was until I won. I was like, wow, this actually really is a very difficult race to win and be part of. And so that is motivating to do. But I mean, just the mental energy it's required before, you know, and during is just like it's something else. And so it's very hard to get myself into that mode because you do have to sacrifice a lot of other things.
Do you feel semi-Hawaiian now?
No, not at all. No, I mean,
Are you still a Howley?
Yeah. I'm a Howley.
Will you always be a Howley?
I can't spell Howley correctly. Yes. I mean, yeah, I respect the culture and it's good they respect me.
But does it feel like home is what I'm asking?
Yeah, Hawaii does feel like home now. Yeah, we love it. They've embraced us and accepted us and we've got to, I love the place. Obviously, if a tsunami comes or something, we get wiped out, I'll come back to Australia. But no, I think I'll be in Hawaii forever. It's a beautiful place. It's expensive, but it's a price to pay, live in paradise. And I'm born and raised.
You don't shop at Whole Foods?
Yeah, we do, because you get Amazon discount because Amazon own it. Long story. But Gold Coast was incredible and it made me who I am. And I guess Hawaiians are definitely more blessed and more lucky with their place. And you get a little lazy in Hawaii, I will admit. Whereas Australia, it's very competitive.
Lazy? Like complacent?
Yeah, complacent, lazy. Everything's just easier. You know what I mean? Except it's very expensive.
But you don't seem like the lazy type. You basically...
Yeah,
You've never actually been a professional athlete in the traditional sense of that's your job, right? You always had to work. And I remember there was a classic story. Well, there was a story on Suprace, but there was a classic like year when you won. I think you beat Kai in Molokai, and the next day he was doing some celebrity thing,
at work,
and you went to work.
That's how I grew up, though. That's how we did paddling. That's like you look at the old footballers in Australia or all the old sports, like hockey players over, they all used to work. And they play hockey on the weekend or football or surf club on the weekend. And so I came from that. And so I just presume that's how you do it. And I've never always thrown my eggs in one basket, which again, like you read some books, they're like, you've got to live, breathe. And I do get that. But at the same time, I was like, why can't you have a balance? That's what my dad always says. And I got to give him, he goes, life's a balance. And I am trying to always balance everything. And you just push a little harder on this for sport for a little bit. And then once that's done, then I'd do something else for a bit. And like I said, December I'd always fast because there's no races. And I was like, just trying to do something else instead of just always paddling. Because if you always just paddle, you will get good at it. But you also get burnt out. And then you don't enjoy the sport anymore. It becomes like training, a chore. So I try and do feast or fast. I'll do a bunch of paddling. And then I'll let it go for a little bit and do something else. Then I start to miss it. And then you sort of can think back on like where you could be better or more efficient, or you might learn something if you step away, you know what I mean? And you come back and you're like, so I did get progressively better and better and better. But now, now I don't have the mental energy to sort of put all that focus on racing at the same level with the other stresses in life. So I've accepted it and, you know, do the other journey in life, but I'll always be a part of stand-up. It was great to be there in the beginning, you know, in the exciting pointy end. And I think stand-up's still going really strong. And it's good to see a lot of young, hungry athletes. And it's good when they ask me questions. I used to always talk with Casper after race because Casper's like, he's like, do I want to do it? And then all of a sudden he goes and wins all these big races, and even he's blown away. And I think it's because he's not, like he's doing other things in life and he steps back and then he gets sort of hungry and does it again, where he's instead of just pounding, you don't win, you get burnt out. So Connor and Casper and these guys, like hats off to them, because they've been doing it almost as long as myself and Danny and they're still going strong. And I'd love to see what motivates them or how much longer they've got at the top. I mean, that'll be a true testament.
What's been motivating you? I know there's a famous story from when, don't know how famous it is, if many people know this, but when you beat Connor a few years ago in Molokai, it was you've had some great battles. But you guys got to China walls 95% through the race. You've got that 1.5 mile upwind grind to the finish, and you were literally neck and neck. Yep. And was your brother in the boat?
Yeah.
Someone yelled out about you.
Yeah. My brother was in the boat that year. We had just had a baby, so I was definitely struggling, but I hadn't let it go yet. I hadn't let the sport go yet, and I was just like, no, I can do this. I didn't train. Elaine was in the boat too. And I didn't train. We had a dugout. I think it was in the first year I did a dugout. And Connor had his flat deck board. I think it was the SIC with starboard. I can't remember which brand it was. But I knew it wasn't very good in the flat. Mm-hmm. I knew how good Connor is in the surf. I wasn't as fit as I should have been that year, but no excuses. I'm still doing it. I think I can beat up. And that was so hard. Connor owned that race. He was the pace. I always try and control the race. If you can control the race, and just be at the front, yet conserve. And if people see you going easy, it's like it kills people. Like if you can be in front and underrate them or look like they're going slow, people just go, oh my god! And so that's what I normally try and do. But this time I was just hanging on to Connor. Like Connor controlled the race, and I was hanging on. And a few times I'm like, I'm just going to give up. But then I think like Connor always says you should never give up, and because you got to talk yourself into all these things while you're out there. And I was just trying to find all excuses. Like I don't want to let Elaine down. Like this, I don't want to let my brother down. And then my brother's yelling out, "Don't do it for Hugo. Do it for your kid. Do it for your wife." And it'd been a hard time. He was not even one. You know, it was such a hard year. But I was like, no excuse. And I was like, no, this is my last year doing this. Like I'm going to beat him. Like for me, you know what I mean. And I just kept telling all these excuses. And it's amazing how far you can push yourself and what you can tell yourself. And I got around the corner and he was in front of me. I actually fell in at China Walls. People saw it because it wasn't on the camera. And I'm like, are you kidding me, Travis? Like, you went all that. He fell in like 5 times. I think I fell in 5 times. We fell in a lot that race, which is not very good for elite athletes falling in. And then I just told myself, like, I live in Hawaii. I live there. I was like, I know this finish well. I know my board is better in the flat water. And this is my last time I'm ever going to race Molokai. I'm going to catch him. And I caught him. I had some friends on the one man right next to me. They were like, canoe friends, and they would basically just talk to me like, you know this better. And then I knew there's little waves there, and I just paddled away from him in the last minute. And I was just like, that was probably the most rewarding race I've ever done in my life, because I didn't give up. And again, like Connor's the one that says never give up, and this is a young kid telling me that, but that entered all these things enter your mind. I could have just quit. I wanted to quit, and I was like, no, like, you're stronger than that. You're better than that. Like, it's a mental test. It's like the fasting thing. Like it's amazing what you just got to find you just find things to do it for. Who can I do it for? I'll do it for Elaine. I'll do it for this person. You just keep making up all these people, and some of them you get emotional with, and then you use that. I did get emotional because you're in so much pain that it turns into energy. So it's hard to do, but when you do it, it's incredible. So that was the most rewarding, because I didn't push myself so hard in my entire life. And then other wins I've won by like 15 minutes, and it was. Obviously, it felt great to come around the corner knowing you got a 15-minute buffer. Like, it's the best feeling in the world, but it becomes boring. The Connor race, you're like, please just give up. Please just give up. Please just give up. And he doesn't.
Do you think you could have won if you didn't have a kid?
But he's thinking the same thing. He's just like, why won't he just back off? And sometimes if I was in front of a race, people do back off. They're like, oh, I'm never going to catch Travis. So they back off. But you got to realize Travis is like, oh, please back off. Like, I'm dying up here. Like, and so it's a mental game. And so, I broke Connor at the end. Like, he didn't even try and compete me in the flat.
But if you didn't have Hugo, if someone wasn't yelling out, do it for Hugo, or
no, I might have been more fit.
Like, did that give you?
Yeah. But no, yeah.
But in that moment, did like having a kid?
Well,
thinking of your kid and your wife and everyone, did that?
I said I went through like 100 people, and then some really gave me energy. And so again, that's sort of what
did Hugo give you energy, or do you think he was keeping me up all night?
No, I got emotional. And then you get emotional. That emotional turns into like raw power sort of thing. And like, you'll see it. It's kind of fun watching sport when you see, people really fire up or get emotional. Like, when you see it and you've done it yourself, you can relate. And so it's same when you watch movies and they lose a loved one or something. It's hard to relate unless you've lost a loved one. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my god. So same in sports now. When I see, how joyful, or like when you see some sports, you're like, oh, I understand what he's going through now because I went through it. So that's the other best thing about sports is that you don't. It puts you through some amazing emotional roller coasters. Some get lucky with victories, and some just always get unlucky. But that's why sport is incredible because it puts you through in so many situations, and it's acute. It's just it's not like a long stress of a war. It's just a war for 1 hour or 4 hours. It's incredible. Like, sport's the best thing in the world. 40 minutes depends what the game is. You know what I mean?
Connor might have some extra energy this year then.
Yeah, I mean,
he's got a kid in a few weeks.
Yeah, he does too. At the same time, for me, it's great racing young people because it sounds terrible, but you want to try, and when you get, I'm only 37, it's not old, but things do get harder, more responsibilities, life definitely gets harder. And but again, it's not an excuse. You just got to find a way to work out what you need. It is great to race younger kids, people, and beat them. Not that Connor and Casper are young anymore, but that is like a motivation is to beat as many young people as you can. And again, it's just, I think it just makes you feel good, but at the same time, you need some sort of motivation. And so that's the motivation. And then what is good is when the young people, I got no secrets. Like I love when people talk to me, like I'm telling all my secrets now that what work for me is I love trying to help them. I was like, what do you do for training? You just going like, are you doing everything else right? Like training to me or practice is just like a small piece of the puzzle. So many other things that go into it, and you only know
Do
that.
you train? Practice? You're famous for rocking up at an event and saying, I'm not going to win, I didn't train today, and then winning by 10 minutes.
So
is that mind games?
No, I mean, obviously a little bit. No, I do everything else right. No, I mean, I don't want people to think, he just gets lucky. Like, I do work hard, and like if I got lucky, I'd just do Molokai every year. But Molokai is draining, so obviously I do try. You know what I mean? I do train for it. I do practice. But yeah, no, I don't devote my life around it. I work it into my schedule. And that's sort of always how I've done it. I don't have a set routine. I sort of try have a routine. But no, I try and train, but I'm sort of that feast and fast guy. I'm like, do it properly and then recover. I don't just go every single day try. I don't see how that's beneficial. Obviously,
but outrigger for you is training as well, right? Or practice.
Oh yeah, I mean
that's the best cross training in the world for SUP, surely.
Yeah, it is feel for the water, and so the paddle is an extension of your hand or your arm. So canoe paddling is the same sort of feel; it's an extension of your hand. So stand up's just the same thing, just a little bit more element and dynamic in play. And don't get me wrong, the more you paddle, the more efficient you do become, if that's your goal. But if you just go hard all the time, you're not going to get anywhere. So you got to try and be as efficient as you can with every stroke. And if you start trying to do that and slow down a little bit, you will become more efficient. And so that's sort of, I got lucky. I used to just paddle all the time here on surf ski. I used to be surf ski. And I'd always just wash ride the older guys because I didn't want to show off. And by accident, I was always in my 80% wash riding and just trying to be not lazy, but more efficient. And then we do a lot of interval work when we were young too, but I never used to lead. So I tell young people these days, like just work on your efficiency and your speed and just get out of that gray zone. So be efficient or crazy fast. And for paddling, it seems to work. If you're a marathon runner or a Tour de France, it's a little different because it is actually, you have to pace yourself. Where in our sport, you have to pace yourself, but there's you look at some video footage where like you can rest on bumps. So it's a little different dynamic to running and cycling. It's a beast of its own, to tell you the truth. And that's sort of why I like it, because there's a lot of skill. And there's no manuals on how to become the best paddler. There's a lot of manuals on how to become the best rider. And it's how you perceive it. I mean, if we had Usain Bolt's Olympic program, doesn't mean you're going to win the 100 meters. So there's all these, everyone wants this amazing program. But if you tell you the truth, you should be able to get any program. And then if you have a piece of the program, you're like, no, I think this will work. And you could take Usain Bolt's sprint program and turn it into something else. And if you believe in it, then I think it will. But Usain Bolt's sprint program will not make you win the 100 meters at Olympics, even though that's exactly what he did. So you have to believe in what you do. And if you believe in it and do everything else right, but you have to have a part in it, then you're on the right track.
Can you give me a manual on how to paddle sitting down before Yukon?
The Yukon thing, I'm a little out of my element because I've never done a multi-day race. I've done a 3-day race, but into 80, but it was.
But you are very good at sitting down.
I'm good at sitting down and paddling, and I'm looking forward to the challenge. But no, I don't have the manual. There is no manual for that kind of race. But the answer is you do have to practice what you're going to do. So you do have to sit in a canoe and go for a long-ass paddle. And you got to report to me and tell me you did it. Please.
Well, speaking of Yukon, we're going to be up there with Jimmy Terrell,
Quick Blade.
the founder of Quick Blade Paddles. You, me, hopefully a fourth person.
Yep.
In the canoe. What's been your relationship with Quick Blade? Because I'm pretty sure it's true that the trifecta is named after you.
Yeah. Met Jimmy Terrell, BOP, in Hawaii. Didn't know who he was. No clue. Sitting at the Outrigger Canoe Club having a beer with this guy talking paddles sort of thing. And I was like, I remember how the golf ball's got the dimples on it. And right then Mythbusters did a dimple car. And it was more efficient than a regular car. I was like, why don't they do that for everything? And I was talking to Jim Terrell about that. And he's like, I'm doing a dimple paddle. But I was like, well, how's that going to work? Because we're trying to hold water, not trying to go faster through the water. And this is just sort of how primitive began. I didn't know he was Quick Blade at the time. It was just my thought. And he was like, that's why I love him, because he tries stuff. Like he takes theories and he has his own theory, and then he actually applies it, and he's a perfectionist. I'm not a perfectionist. So I sort of like get my board and paddle and figure out how to make that work. Well, he's a perfectionist. So same with Elaine design, he's a perfectionist. And so I guess designers do have to be perfectionists. And so I know that they're perfectionists, so they're making the ultimate paddle. So I just believe in that equipment like you wouldn't believe. And that I have the best board and the best paddle out there, bar none. And that is the reason I won so many races, because I'm like, I know my board's the best in these conditions, which is every condition, because that's where you got to tell yourself, whereas you know your board sucks in something, you're going to get to that position, this board sucks, and you're going to get overtaken. So yeah, Jimmy Terrell, that's why I love the guy, because he's so good at what he makes. And then they did I wanted a longer paddle, so it would sort of go deeper in the water where the water's stiller, and the water's, especially, it's always turbulent. So I remember Ian Thorpe, an Australian swimmer, was like, I try and get my hand as deep as I can. There's a limit, because if you go too deep, you'll be just a stern wheel. And stern wheels, they work. I mean, they're still around. They go forward, but they're not as efficient as, say, like a jet. You know what I mean? Because it's a jet. Just push so the paddle goes in and goes straight back. Whereas stern wheel, if you go deep, you're just becoming a stern wheel. So a lot of people are stern wheels when they paddle, because they hear someone say you got to get deep as you can, and they bury the blade and they just become a stern wheel. So I just wanted a longer paddle where the bite was at the very bottom, without being too fatiguing, and it can't slip, but it can't hold too much water, because sometimes you need the paddle to slip. You need that forgiveness. But yeah, you make a small paddle, it'll just slip all the time. So we eventually got this long, skinny paddle, and I don't know where the trifecta name came from. We're trying to picking names. If you got to name a board, it was
something to do with your 3 victories.
Yeah, that's what
you'd won something like it was Carolina, Molokai, and the Gorge, or
I think it was trying to make sure you win 3 Molokais or something. And I was like, okay. And then and it was trifecta, and it's the best feeling paddle. It's not made for sprints. It's made for paddling. So for a sprint, you could use a bigger paddle for sure. But there weren't that many. I wasn't a sprint person, he's sort of done a hybrid, a UV, which is sort of a cross between the trifecta and the V drive. But again, the idea was to hold as much water as it can, as small as shape as it can. That's sort of the whole idea.
I got that paddle. I used the UV on the Yukon.
Oh right, yeah.
So it mustn't be very fast. Let me see if anyone else.
No. So the UV to me holds more water. It actually really does hold more, and it's very heavy. But you want your paddle to feel heavy, because if the paddle doesn't feel heavy, then you clearly not. It's slipping, or or the paddle's inefficient. So you put the paddle in the water, it sticks, and then technically the paddle can only go as fast as the craft is moving. If you go skiing and you put your ski poles in the snow, you can't just rip the ski poles back. They're stuck there until you go past them. Paddling should be the exact same.
So we should imagine we're paddling in the snow.
Essentially, and you'll have a really slow rate in the beginning. That's where you do need the paddle to slip a little bit, so you can, kind of like a car race, they do spin wheel a little bit, but the guys that spin wheels a lot obviously get left behind, and so whoever's got the most grip. So paddling is kind of the same. And then if you watch the Tahitians in the canoe, you watch how slow that they can paddle, and yet they're just flying because they have so much connection with the water. So people miss that when they're paddling. They're always just too busy trying to get fit and strong. So if you ask me, getting fit and strong is actually pretty easy. There's a lot of trainers that can get you fit and strong in a short amount of time. But feel for the water, I mean, that's something you can't be taught. And you'll only be able to teach yourself if you try and slow down. So that was where my huge advantage was. I was luckily very efficient in the water, and I'd conserve most of the race. I never would lead a race. Well, not lead. I'd never try and show off. I mean, like Boothie and Danny just take off, and it works for them. And so you're like, hey, how am I going to beat him? So I'd always just try and conserve, and then pick my time to attack, and it would work. Everything's got to be. It's not easy winning races. And right now, like Boothie's Boothie's killing it with just fitness and strength. He
You
really
think
is.
that's why is he so far? Not so far ahead, but why is he dominating?
Boothie's a real, like, so in Australia, there's a lot of competition and there's a lot of real athletes, and Australians are always out trying to prove how fit and strong they can be. You know, it's kind of the same thing. You go over there, you're like, no, I'm this, and you just work really hard to make a name for yourself, essentially. And Boothie really is, and he's just, I think he's just really fit and strong. That's it. He's just out fit. He's just stronger and fitter and stronger than everyone. Comes to skill races, I mean, like beach races and sprints and big downwind surfing. He's not as technical at them, but you just do a grind. He's pound for pound, you never match. So he's definitely getting better at everything. It's just how hungry is he? Is he going to work on his weaknesses because he's untouchable in the distance, or is he just going to, normally you stick to what you're good at. So I'm terrible at sprints too, and I just never practice. And so I'm like, how am I going to get better if I never practice?
Do you think that's going to be a format? I mean, really, what do you think what's the future of the sport going to be? Let's go broad.
I don't know.
The sport's gone through a lot of roller coasters since we've both been doing this for 10 odd years. What's it going to be like in another 10 years?
I don't know. I do
will
actually.
Will you still be paddling?
I hope to be involved
2030.
in some way, and may even be coaching. And again, because my approach is a little different, because I do go on feel and what has worked for me. You read the theories, and then you just apply your own theory to it, and you believe in it. I do like what APP is trying to do, because they are not. I'm not sponsored by them, don't worry. They're trying. I mean, they're taking the sport and they're trying this format. And I said I did it 2 years ago and it was fantastic. I didn't know again, but I didn't do very well because there's a sprint element, and not making excuses. I just wasn't very good at it. I just wasn't motivated to try and train in the sprints. I don't know where it's going to go. I think Molokai is definitely the pinnacle for distance racing. Sprint racing, if you ask me, it actually is the APP, because it's a dynamic. It's not just that's the best thing. It's not just in a lane. And then you go to the one end and you win. It is, every sprint race is different and dynamic and sometimes unfair. But that's the nature of the race. Same with distance racing. You can get unlucky. Same with ocean racing. You can get unlucky. And that's sort of what the attraction to this race is there's other elements out of your control, like the weather. So, in a running track.
I think that's a different kind of luck. You can get unlucky in a downwind race, but if you're unlucky in a sprint race because you drew the wrong lane.
Yeah. That's just
I had Jackson in here the other week, and he was. The
only way to do it fair is if you have lanes inside,
which is extraordinarily boring.
And it's
it's fun until the novelty wears off, which takes 5 minutes, and then it's a pretty boring format.
The first, again, everyone's like, everyone goes, I wish BOP would come back, or that format. And I'm like, well, they're missing the big. Everyone's like, what are you thinking? Like, you're missing on the past, but like, it's only because there was no one seen it before. It was brand new. So I said, if no one ever seen a lane race before in your life, and you go on a lane race, everyone's like, this is incredible. And then so BOP in its time was incredible, and it was fun. It was not much different to what they do in Australia, but it was new and exciting. So like foiling right now, foiling's all the buzz. So it's just a sport. The sport, in my opinion, has to actually evolve, and I mean, APP is trying to evolve and make different races, and some will be exciting, some will stick. And downwind is boring to watch, but it's fun to do as a competitor, because it's changing, it's challenging, and you're in an incredible environment. I mean, you're in the most amazing places on earth. Whereas if you're in like a velodrome all the time, it becomes a chore. So do
you think we can make it a spectator sport, or is this going to just be a participation sport?
So I haven't thought about that, to be honest. I don't have an invested interest in
because I know the APP spends a lot of their goal is to make us like the Formula One of the ocean. Like they want to be a spectator friendly, short, sharp, which is an admirable goal. Do you think we'll get there?
Formula One's incredible. I love watching the Formula One, and they do an incredible job, and there's a lot of money involved.
They go a lot faster than a paddleboard.
And it is exciting, and some races are boring. There are some races
Formula One,
themselves.
funnily enough, Formula One now has a crisis because the purists are saying it's the most boring it's ever been, because the cars are too good.
Yeah.
It's basically, it's not the driver, it's the engineer. But then no one can overtake because
you're not going to get the other way. This year you gave everyone the same car. Once you're in that position, you'll never be able to overtake anyone, because everyone's in the exact same car. Like all the drivers are the same skill level pretty much. But then it's just who can make their equipment get the most out of it. And it's awesome watching, the Formula One guys have a bad start, go through the field. Yeah, they definitely have a equipment advantage, but I mean, I feel like that's just part of the game.
Well, let's go the other way. because I don't think we're ever going to be like Formula One,
No.
just because we're the slowest thing in the ocean. But let's go the other way. I know you've been spending a lot of time with Elaine in Europe, biathlon and cross country skiing.
Oh yeah.
Something I'm fascinated by, especially the biathlon side where they do the skiing and the shooting. I think they've taken the most extraordinarily boring sport, which is flat cross-country skiing. Don't even bother going down a hill. It's just on the flat.
A couple of hills, and that's hard to do cross-country skis.
I tried it when I was with Elaine.
On your bum.
I crashed pretty quick. But they've essentially taken the same thing as SUP, a boring flat sport. It's like the frozen version of SUP, cross-country skiing. And they've made this fascinating televised spectacle where the top athletes are superstars. It's on TV every week. What's our version of that?
You can do
Is it
that
the
'cause
bop?
they have a little bit more controlled environment where we're sort of dependent on the ocean, which is very, very fickle, unless you go to flat water races.
Could we do a flat water version and bring something in that made it our version of biathlon?
I know. I mean, you'd have to do something that's water related, so it'd have to be another a water challenge, like a breath hold. You know what I mean? Like that's sort of what the shooting is. You're doing this intense aerobic sport. You got to pace yourself, then you got to calm yourself down and use a skill. So if you ask me, it'd be like spearfishing or something, or something that is water related, not land related, because that's
Fernando
what we're
Starr
on.
would love that one.
He would. I mean, yeah. And I don't know what that would be. I haven't.
Well,
really
how about
thought
Iron
it.
X? Did you watch that?
So obviously people are overseas don't know what we're talking about. No, I haven't, but I saw a lot of people grumbling. Iron X was an Ironman cross with like CrossFit and breath hold. It was one of them I saw.
And
I
SUP.
do and SUP, yeah, and some SUP athletes were
It was
involved.
a big deal in Australia.
I think it's a fantastic idea because the guy McPorro, I think, was progressing the sport. He's like, everyone's like, I want the old Ironman days, but I'm like, again, like everyone's like, you can't think back on how good. Like I remember being as a kid, and the surf used to be huge and perfect every day. But it definitely wasn't. And so people were just remembering the best part. The sport wasn't brilliant every way. It had its problems back then. And I'm sure the athletes back then are always voicing, this should make it better, so make it better. And eventually it didn't.
We're talking about lifeguard racing.
Yeah,
For
it didn't
anyone-
become any better.
Anyone
So
that's lost track here.
SUP's doing the same thing. Everyone's like, how can I make it? But I mean, people have to try, but not everyone has to try. I don't know where it's going to go. I thought that the Ironman X was a great idea because it's getting people out of the element, and I know people are going, this is not like it should be, this is not the sport. So
Well, that was the clubby side. The surf life saving purists weren't happy. Every stand-up paddler I've talked to said, this is great.
well,
Let's do
everyone who
more."
doesn't know the sport was interested, which is more demographic.
That's the point, right? Get a new audience.
They have made the sport harder though now for people to do because it's like, but again, the most popular sports in the world.
This could be the TV spectacle side of the sport.
Well, the most popular sports in the world, apart from the running races, are the Spartans. So, they're really, really popular. Now, there's something about that too. Like, do they want to throw a stand-up? But again, stand-up's hard because there's a lot of equipment involved. So again, with sport with equipment, like car racing's hard because there's a really big piece of equipment involved. So again, I'm just making this up in my head. I haven't actually thought about it because it's not. I'm not in that era. I'm still in the sort of playing with it. And same with races. Like a race comes about, and that's the best thing about new races is and same with even Molokai. The conditions are never the same, so you can't just go out there and know exactly. You have to adapt or adjust or read the conditions on the fly. And so that's one of those things. If you're training and be efficient, you can look around and see what you have to adjust to. You need a game plan, of course. That's another thing I like about the sport is that you do have to adjust on the fly because it is very, where the condition orientated, and then your craft has to be able to suit the said conditions that are thrown at you. I am a little bit for. I used to be for the one class thing, and then now I'm like, you know what? No, I think
One design of a paddleboard.
I was into that because I was a good paddler, and I was like, no, I want one class as well. But now I'm like, no, you know what? Like that's how the sport evolves. You got to let people try things and do things, and it's motivating. Like it is, it's motivating. And obviously Unlimited was a huge motivation for the stand-up. Now foiling's taking over, and I mean, it's great watching it, and that's definitely a Formula One race. That's an arms race like you wouldn't believe. Now that I'm curious to see where that goes, but the skill level for foiling is just, I mean, stand-up's already a niche market. Downwind stand-up's even more of a niche market. Downwind foiling, you'd count on your hands how many guys can do it. Not many.
Well, I had Dave on the show a couple of weeks ago, and that was basically his thing. He's like, "There's going to be 12 of us on the start line. Let's not. We can't take it too seriously. At least not yet.
Not yet. But again, I mean, no one thought it would be foiling, and it just takes one person to show you can. So I mean, anyone can can do it. Like anyone, like I say, I can't do it. You can do it.
Do you think it'll kill ocean paddling?
Will
it kill the unlimited? Because it's kind of killed the unlimited. Unlimited was making a bit of a resurgence in Australia, foiling. Basically, everyone that was doing unlimited foiling is now doing. Sorry, unlimited SUP is now doing foiling.
Just I mean, if you be unlimited and you're not winning, you're like, oh, I've done that. I can't do it.
But even just for fun, like the guys here that'll do the downwind runs, if they were gonna take out an unlimited, now they take it out of the foil.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of the same. It's kind of now it's just a new challenge. The unlimited is also they're expensive, they're heavy, they are fragile in a sense.
Unlimited, you mean?
Unlimited paddle boards, but foils are also expensive,
Foils
fragile. Yeah,
crazy.
So no, it's again the same with paddling. The reason I'm canoe paddling is because in Hawaii there's hundreds of people that do it. There's only a handful that do stand up now. So you sort of also adjust to what your surroundings are doing because you want to. It's a social sport. Like there's not the glory is, if you ask me, it's a personal achievement. So it's like normally you got to prove to someone. Like normally, like I said, Dave Clammer called me out, so I was like, I'll do it again. You do need some. I'd hate to say it, like energy or bad energy or whatever they call it, angry energy to get you to do something. And I know Connor and Guy had it for a while. And it was great to watch because they just want to beat each other. But if you're like all rosy and
quite literally,
what's the motivation to do well? So you do need to find some motivation.
Yeah.
And so normally it's all these people are doing it. If you're the only guy doing stand up in your town, I mean, it's hard to get motivated to do well. And then also, how do you get better? Because you need people to push you. You need to push each other. You need to learn from each other. And I love training with people the same age because you're both going to get better. You're both going to learn, especially if you're on different craft. And you get to see like, oh, that's why he's craft. Like it's all learning. So I like doing sports. I do the sport because of the social side. Like I love having a beer afterwards and having a chat. Like everyone who knows me at races, I'm like this podcast. I've done all the talking. I love talking, and that's the best thing about the sport and teaching people. I hate guys that just rock up and then just leave. Like you're missing the best part of the sport, you guys. The best part of the sport is training, and then the best part of the sport is going to the event, staying with people, and then the race is just a bonus and seeing how you can apply that when on call. And then normally you don't do it very well at first. Normally you buckle under pressure, and I was the same when I was young. I'm like, he's better than me, he's better than me. And then you start to just get better and more efficient, and you talk to the good guys. You ask them good questions, and eventually you become confident. And like I said, then all of a sudden you reach the top. You're like, that was an unreal journey. And then where do you go from there? I remember a friend always said like it's easier to get to the top than to stay on top because you have all this motivation. You know, you're trying to prove, and you when you do beat someone, like, and it's not everyone's fault. Like when you beat a lot of people I know, just go, oh, I just want to beat you one day, and I'm like, I take it as a compliment because I'm like, I remember feeling that. I never said that to them, but you're just trying to beat someone you looked up to. And then when you do beat them, you got to let them bask in the glory because that was their whole goal. Your whole goal. So that's it there. Now what's your next challenge? You know what I mean? And then they go, oh, I haven't thought about that. And so when you're at the top, you're like, well, what am I going to do now? And so it is hard to stay up there because it's not as motivating, but it's very motivating to get there. So those guys that do stay on top for a long time, they've got something special mentally, because it is very hard to stay on top.
Yeah. Who do you think is going to be on top the next couple of years? Is anyone going to touch Boothie?
It honestly depends on the format.
Well, if you look at, look at the world rankings, which is generally a mismatch of everything, every format, all-round best paddler in the world.
Well, there's more distance racing. There's definitely more distance racing.
That's another thing. Coming back to what you were talking about earlier about APP trying to do spectator-friendly sprints, and they've had mixed results getting that off the ground. Our sport's kind of almost it's coalesced around the one format. It's the 10K 1 hour race, flat water. That seems to be 95% of races, which is good and bad because it's good that it's very accessible.
Yeah.
It's so easy. Like you look at Glar race. We had 600 people on the water.
Incredible.
It's such an easy race to do.
People can do an hour race. It's easy to train for. It's only 1 hour. I think there's a lot for it. Even as an athlete, you're like, oh, I can do that. But when you start throwing a 4 hour race, you're like, you got to really want to do it. Or you're like myself, I'm not doing that.
But on the flip side, it's basically becomes a sport that favors someone like, a Boothie type of athlete.
Yeah.
And you get other paddlers. Look at Casper. He really only does the APP because it's got the sprint element, and even the second half of that, the distance, he doesn't even bother. No. He knows it's not his forte.
Yeah.
Are we going to end up losing good athletes because we don't have enough versatility of races? Like, look, Mo doesn't race anymore because there's no BOP races.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, that people are doing what they're good at. If they're not, the races and what they're good at, if it's not downwind, then Connor's like, I'm not going to do it. sort of thing. And I mean, I'm a little bit the same. And I don't have the answer there. The dedicated athletes will do it all, and Boothie does it all. And the ones that aren't as dedicated, like myself and I guess Mo and Casper, they just pick and choose what they're good at because they want to look good. So I don't think you'll ever change that.
I mean, if we had more versatility of races, we could change it.
How do you attract new paddlers to get into it? I mean, that's because if someone's good at one race, then they're always going to win, which is what a sprint. I don't have the answer there, unfortunately. I mean, the ocean is supposed to change all the time. It's just time. I mean, I feel like
most races just aren't in the ocean anymore, which again is a good and a bad thing.
Good and a bad thing. Yeah. I mean, I do try and avoid all races that aren't in the ocean. There's so much.
That way you're doing 3 days in the river and.
Well, it's different. There's energy. So, like in the reason like ocean is there's energy, and obviously not everyone's born in the ocean. So some people are landlocked and they've got no choice, and they'll never be good in the ocean. And it's not their fault. It's just this is their demographic, and they'll only be good in that environment that they've born up in, and they don't know what they're missing out on. So it's a tough one. Where that's why I guess marathon running or Spartan racing is more popular because you can make up the race and practice, whereas stand up you can't practice unless you live in that environment, and that's why guys in Hawaii do dominate in Hawaii because they get to practice. Because that's the energy out there is just incredible. I mean, you could paddle in Australia all day long, which is good energy, but Hawaii's different energy. Tahiti's different energy again. It's all Pacific Ocean.
I remember you telling me the early days that you didn't like racing at Dana Point because it felt like dead water compared to racing in Hawaii.
Shallow, weed, very weak energy. Yeah, it was because so again, this is back to what I was doing. I got to learn to harness the energy and always looking for it. There's always an underlying energy in the ocean, whether it's a current, or even the water coming back and forth from the shore, from rocks, or even from boats. So that's what I would always look for from paddling, and I had a board that would do well in those energies. I remember the Dana Point it felt very dead to me, and I always struggled to sort of enjoy that race. And it's really dead. But I don't know why I was negative and grumpy on that race for some reason. I actually did. I mean, I did well in there every year normally. I did really
One of your most famous performances of all time when you had a broken knee.
I couldn't walk. Yeah,
hobbled up the beach over the line. You still won the distance race. 2013 BOP.
Yeah, I
was on the boat screaming.
It's confidence. It was just me. Like Danny Ching was unbeatable at the end, and I was like, I had to change my race plan. And it was experience. It's a combination of everything: experience, confidence, and a little bit of luck, and a little bit of grit, and a little bit of I can't. I mean, I remember that race very well, but I don't remember what made me win it at the time.
I can tell you were. There was a 20-man draft train, and we all knew that if you were in the draft train at the end, there was no hope in how you could win because you couldn't walk up the beach.
So I had to get there first. Yeah.
So you had to get a clear lead to the finish, and at one point you just took off from the train and went about 40 yards inside and went parallel. And Danny was so confident, he's like, well, Trav, there's no way he's going to out-paddle me.
Well, no one followed me either. I think only one or two go.
Everyone wanted to follow Danny.
Which is, if I was a racer, I'd probably do the same thing if you're especially right behind him. I think back then, not many people were experienced at racing. And so me and Danny were in the canoe, so we did know race tactics. And yeah, if you want to pass someone, you don't pass them right next to them. You got to go way out wide, where it's like they're too far now to come back to you, and then it makes them panic. And then you just need to be really smart and, again, look for some energy, hope for some energy. Same with downwind racing. If you're next to someone on a downwind race, you block that window to surf left. He blocks that window to surf right. So I'm always looking like super, super far, like left and right. It's hard to do for 4 hours. You can't be on point the whole time. But if you're next to someone, something like if you're downwind racing, that's why it's not as exciting because you want to be as far away from as you can. So it don't, for one, get in your head. Especially if someone's right next to you and you see him just standing there, it does get in your head, and that's what I always try and do, like try and make it a little bit easy as possible. Yeah, so you can surf left and right. So downwind racing is so fun for the athlete, but it's boring for the spectator because you're not bumping, you're not racing, because you could both go slower. Whereas car racing, you're on a tiny little track and it's exciting. But then BOP racing for me, you're on a tiny little track that you sort of like, again, it nearly is one class because you can't get past someone like a car race because you're sort of just stuck in that train or in the ocean, especially. So the BOP race, if they went, it's on like Australian style, like in and out, and then at the very end you go around a can out, and then you have basically free range to get all the way in. That would be exciting. So the race would be kind of boring until that last can.
Yeah.
And then if you can turn and have 4 people sort of turn together, or then a long way in, then guys will turn wide, and because then it's just find your own way back in. You get lucky. So that's how sprint races should be. It should be the last can should be so far out that you can have a line sprint to the beach and people can take their own course. If you have a turn right before the beach, it's the biggest waste of time in any sport. You know what I mean? The guy who turns the can first is always going to win. So that's how they should do races in the future for sprinting, because otherwise it's the first guy. Everyone knows the first guy who turns first can wins.
Yeah,
So,
I know that's a big complaint every time there's a sprint race. But I think, for me personally, I think trying to make SUP a spectator sport is looking at it the wrong way. Yep. I think the interest in SUP, for one, is that anyone can do it. It's a participation-based sport. But for me, what's interesting about the sport, and I'm extraordinarily biased because this is what I do, but for me, it's the stories. Like Molokai is the most fascinating event to me, not because it's exciting to watch. It's boring as shit to watch. You just paddle, take a few strokes for 5 hours. Nothing happens until you get to China Walls. But the stories in that race are extraordinary. The history, the prestige, the preparation, what goes in, what happens behind the scenes, what happens on race day, the highs, the lows. There's stories in that race. And I think at the end of the day, everybody in all walks of life, no matter what it is, but especially in paddling, people just want interesting stories.
I think I agree that Molokai, especially every I did it, it was entertaining as hell for some reason. Again, I was right in the middle of it. So it was, I think the harder the race, the harder logistics, the harder it is, the more meaningful the race means to people. So you just rock up to a sprint race, you don't do well, you know what I mean? There's no effort required. It's just to do Molokai, you ask anyone, it's so hard logistically. Everything's hard. So when you do get there,
it's a race just getting to the start line.
It is. It's there's so much passion in everyone's, because of their own. Everyone has. It wasn't easy. It's not an easy race to get to. So same with the Tour de France. I mean, that's how long is that race? But again, it's such a logistical nightmare that's what you appreciate for the sport. So it sounds bad and it's hard to do every year because logistically it's so expensive. But that's what makes the race so powerful. And when everyone finishes that race, hanging out afterwards down at the beach at Outrigger, you can see everyone just wants to tell their story. You know what I mean? On even if they got 50th, they're like, and it's interesting to hear because they're passionate. I have to tell someone what I just went through. Where again, a sprint race, you get knocked out, you're like you go home, how's the race? Yeah. Whereas Molokai, you have something to talk about. You have a story there, and something always happened because it's so long. This happened, or you nearly got hit. No one couldn't find my boat. Everyone's got a story. So that's why I think this Yukon race should be exciting because, man, there's going to be a story for doing that distance and that logistics. So Spartan's the same thing. There's a lot. So maybe that's the answer. Maybe you need to race an adventure race so appealing, but at the same time, Molokai is so difficult that not everyone does it every year because it is. So, that's why it's so powerful and interesting.
Yeah.
11 cities is the same. It's a bit of an attraction to 11 cities.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't want to bring it up because I know it's not your favorite race, but to me, the other race alongside Molokai that's the most fascinating is 11 cities.
There is.
Because
it's an attraction.
Such a fascinating event.
So for paddlers out there,
so when are you doing 11 cities this year?
Yeah, I could do it again. It'd just be for a bucket list and an adventure, and more, like I said, the socials thing, the people you meet, the adventure you share. You know, what I mean, that's what outrigging's so cool because you have 6 guys or 9 guys in the canoe. You share this story together. The longer the race, the more meaningful the story is. You know, you do a 500-meter sprint with 6 guys. You're like, that was cool. You released a lot of energy, but it's still not. You don't have that connection if you do a 5-hour race.
There's no more social race than the 11 cities.
Yeah,
you stay together on these old Dutch wooden floating hostels for a week. You paddle together all day. You suffer, and everyone wants to tell their stories. Yeah, man, that 4-hour mark hit the wall.
That's the sport. That is, and then the weather comes into play as well. That's a story in itself.
There's always some weather over there.
Can't be the light was too bright. When you're doing side, I mean, and people, and obviously in races inside would complain about that sometimes, I'm sure. So,
well, speaking of 11 cities, I think the funnest race last year that I did was the 11X spin-off in Thailand, the 11 Islands. And I think for me, that's the future of the sport is the adventure side of it, the bucket list side of it.
That's something that I would be interested in as well. Yeah.
Can we put you down for 11 Islands?
Well, now it's just time.
It's incredibly sold out, but I'm sure we can get you a VIP.
Now it's just time and money. Because everyone's again, that's the next thing is some people, they can't just get that much time off to train. But again, that's part of the life. You got to work out a way to do it if you want to do it.
But it's a holiday. Most people
bring your
family. Lucky enough to get holidays every year.
Yeah, if you can make some money and do it, it's worth it. And that's the idea. I'd never fly to California or never fly to anywhere just to go on a holiday. That's to me is boring. In a hotel, you're sitting in the spa, you're what am I doing? But I'd go to a destination like Thailand for a race like that because then you get all the benefits of holiday with. So that's what people should aspire to do. That's where stand-up should come into play or will come into play is some families might go, I'm going to train to this race in this cool destination. And that's why Hawaii is so popular. I get to go to Hawaii, and I'm going to go there for a race.
And the
So-
gorge is another one. There's very few places. I
Hood
think a
River.
good measurement for a race is would you go there and paddle if there wasn't a race on?
Hood River is incredible, but again, Hood River is unreal. Hawaii is unreal. Carolina's fun because of the people. You know what I mean? And the
So
challenge.
you wouldn't do the graveyard race just for fun.
No, you don't do it for fun. It's a challenge. You don't do Molokai for fun either. But you do.
But you do a Maliko run for fun.
Absolutely. It's short enough. You know what I mean? Maui to Molokai is the stepping stone. If you're worried you do it, you do a Maliko run first. If you can handle Maliko, then you could maybe progress to Maui to Molokai. If you live in the lake, you got to go over and do a class over in Molokai or Oahu or Maui and learn how to paddle ocean because there's a whole different animals. But yeah, again, I'm very biased. I'm coming from an ocean background. Like I'm never going to 11 cities doesn't interest me because of the flat water.
But would you do an 11 cities for the mental side and the social side?
But the Thailand thing does because you're kind of in the ocean. You know what I mean? There's more elements. It's not just a canal.
We'll pencil you in for an 11 cities
day.
and we'll lock you in for an 11 islands.
One day.
But you, before we go, you skipped the question before.
What was that?
Got to tell us who's going to be the top paddler.
I know Danny Ching's trying really hard again this year. We
Yeah?
speak.
He wants to make a
he's
full comeback?
He's all he's done. He wants to try, and he's definitely got the.
When you say try, he wants to try to be number one again?
Yeah. I mean, he wants to try number one again, and if he wants to, he could be. It's just how bad does he want to, and can he fit it in? I think Boothie's still hungry again, so I think between Boothie and Danny. Personally. Yeah.
So you think Danny will be
obviously
top 2 or 3 this year?
I grew up with him, so I know how good he was. So I still live on. You hold on to that, like how good people were. I see some older people that I used to race against, and I still think they're incredible, even though they're like 50 years old now. I still have that massive respect for him. So I got respect for Danny on what he's done because I used to single-handedly race him, and he used to always beat me in the beginning. Then I started beating him at the end when I sort of worked out how to beat him. You know what I mean? I didn't match him for a game. You're not going to be stronger or faster than Danny. And then Boothie comes along and does exactly what Danny used to do. At the moment, without knowing what's going on with everyone else, I know the Hazuya brothers are stepping it up the best way they know how, which is just through fitness. So they could be definitely deadly in flat water races. So Boothie will have his challenge there. If it comes to skillful races, then you are going to look to guys like Connor and Danny. And then it comes down to equipment as well. Who's got the best equipment for the day?
You think anyone's going to touch Boothie in the standard 1 hour distance races?
The one person also who I know is very good is Tituan.
I wanted to bring T2 up because I'd say if you had to pick someone who has the best stroke in the world, technique, I always used to say, just watch Travis. If you want to be a good paddler, watch Travis. Now I would actually say
T2 for sure.
T2.
I know he's trying, and I think he's the best all-round paddler who can do all of it. He just, for some reason, he can win any race, and just sometimes he just misses out. I hope maybe he's confident enough now. I think it's just confidence with him. If he knows he can win, he'll win. And so I used to be the same little bit. If I know if this race is made for my board, made for me, some races I'll go to and like, you guys are never going to beat me. I'm going to win. You know what I mean? Like, and you tell yourself that, and you can. So I think T2 I think he could do it this year.
He started the year well. He won Glagla.
Yeah.
It was a pretty solid field there this year as well.
Flat water. Obviously, his specialty is small bump. The NSP boards are incredible in small bump. This is what they're designed for. He's got a similar background to me. I hope T2 can do it. I think he can. So it's between those three.
So you'd say Boothie, T2, Danny, maybe the Silios. It's not very bold, Trav.
Yeah, I know.
Throw in a dark horse from left field.
I used to be able to pick it every race.
Throw in a dark horse, way left field.
I'm not following it as much as I used to. I'm not involved. Like, because when you're involved and you race someone, you can see straight away, like, mentally, no, guy's got no chance. Like, good paddler, but never in a million years. So that's the only reason I've predicted those guys. All right.
Well, are we going to see you on the start line at any? Have you committed to any single race this year?
I have not.
All right. Well,
APP's in Maui this year.
Early July.
Week before Molokai. So
late July.
I know T2 and Ty are coming for an SP. It might spurk me to train with him. I know Booth is going to do a month in Hawaii. He wants to win Molokai. And again, I would too. Like, it is the great thing to put in your resume, and it's a personal achievement. It's a personal goal. So, hopefully T2 and Ty also do Molokai now. I think this APP might make more people do Molokai, and it'll be a downwind month in Hawaii. And
it's going to go back to a proper downwind month now.
I think
because Connor is working on a triple crown with the Mua M2M M2O. You've got this APP come out of left field in the middle there. There's basically 4 straight weekends of racing.
I think it's incredible. And
it's like the good old days, downwind month in Hawaii.
Maybe I might just join in, you know what I mean, see how I go. And I don't think I'll do Molokai, but I might join in for some of that. I've got the boards there. It's fun. Hopefully everyone come. Hopefully the downwind month, hopefully more people come. And obviously Connor wants to make it 14 to see if more people will come. So it'd be an interesting sort of poll to see like, okay, obviously unlimited is a lot easier and a lot funner once if you're in those conditions. That 14 foot is a fair bit trickier and harder to surf. So once you've done unlimited, you're like, why would you ever do 14 this channel? So it'd be hard to step back. But Connor's doing it to try and get more people to come. Now, most boards these days are more for flat water because there's not many more downwind races. So everyone's elite boards are more for flat water. Obviously, we do, companies and riders are using flat water boards downwind. I'm using my Carolina board for downwind now. Like your skill level just improves so much. So let's see. I mean, it'd be good for you, Sup Race to do a poll to see if people would do a 14 in Hawaii, or they're still like, I got no chance. I'm going to get beat by the guys that surf. But Hood River's popular, so it'd be interesting to see. I mean, I'm not sure which way to go there. I'm like, no, I think we should do unlimited because it's more fun. But unlimited is not every brand has an unlimited, so it's going to rule some people out.
Seems to be a bit of a dying breed.
And APP's on 14, so maybe APP might be the catalyst to change it.
Well, I know Connor's already. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's already penciled in 2021 as.
I have heard that. Yeah,
14 for the big 3 in Hawaii.
I've been asked. I'm not sure which way to go though. I think whatever gets the most people down there, that's the race. You got to figure out how to win now on that race. But
I mean, they're 14. It's a no-brainer then, surely.
Only if more people do it. I'd hate for that to happen and then just the same guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think you need to do a poll and say, okay, what do people want? I'm curious because I know that people do unlimited. It is more fun. It is nearly worth going that route because it's new as well. Like I know everyone's got a 14, but they're still not on Hawaii. It's still hard to get there. So maybe unlimited is just this like, it's just a foil. It's a bit of a challenge and again, let's see what happens.
Everyone just goes foiling instead.
Well, no wind turn. That's too hard. I still can just fall to the beach, let alone across the channel.
All right. Well, we can sufficely say that you're definitely going to be on the start line in the Yukon River Quest end of June.
In Canada.
I'm going to go start training.
Good.
Thanks very much for joining us here.
I hope that wasn't too long. How long was that? I told you not to do a long one.
That was a solid 2 hours, I think.
Oh,
that's less than Joe Rogan.
All right. Sorry, everyone.
No, I think that was fascinating. The people want to hear from you.
Thanks, Christopher.
All right. Thanks a lot, mate.
Take the hand.
Cheers.
See you later.
We'll talk to you soon.
Really? That was 2 hours?
I think we went for 2 hours. We're still going.
Oh, it's still going?
Yeah.
I said 40 minutes something. I was the one doing the talking. You didn't talk much at all. Run out of words. I will get home. I won't talk to my wife. And she'll be like, what happened? I'm talking all day. Seriously, I run out of words. I've got a quota each day.